2024-563, RS 2024-564, RS 2024-565, RS 2024-567, RS 2024-569, RS 2024-570, RS 2024-572, RS 2024-573, RS 2024-574, RS 2024-575, RS 2024-576, and RS 2024 BL 2024-429. Does anyone have anything that they would like to pull from the consent agenda? Councilmember Coopin, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Just making sure I get to it. I would like to make sure that item number 10 is off, please. And then item 18. Please pull item 10 and item 18 from the consent agenda.
RS 2024-570 has been taken off of the consent agenda, and BL 2024-428 is not on the consent agenda. All right, anything else? That was 18, correct, Councilmember Coopin? Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else that wants to pull anything from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and read the captions. RS 2024-560, Porterfield Evans Walsh Aurora approves the application for the Metropolitan Government General Services Court for a Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program grant from the U.S. Department of Justice to improve the General Sessions Court Competency Docket Program. RS 2024-563, Porterfield Evans Walsh Aurora approves Amendment 1 to a grant from the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency to the Office of Emergency Management to provide public assistance for damage caused by severe storms, straight-line winds, and tornadoes during December 2021. RS 2024-564, Porterfield West Aurora approves Amendment 15 to a grant to the State of Tennessee, Tennessee Emergency Management Agency to the Department of Finance to provide public assistance pursuant to Presidential Disaster Declaration FEMA-1909-DR-TN to complete repairs and or replacements of facilities damaged during the April and May 2010 flood. RS 2024-565, Porterfield, Gamble, Toombs, and others declares surplus and approves the disposition of certain parcels of real property in accordance with Section 2.2.4-2.250G of the Metropolitan Code of Law. RS 2024-567, Porterfield accepts the terms of a cooperative purchasing master agreement for snow and ice handling equipment, supplies, and accessories for the Department of General Services. RS 2024-569, Porterfield, Parker, and Welsh approves the application for the subrecipient grant to the Tennessee Technological University to the Metro Nashville Department of Transportation for the Charging Tennessee Advancing Public Vehicle Fleet Electrification Project. RS 2024-572, Porterfield, Styles, Walsh, and others appropriates $2,716,275 from the National Public Library to various nonprofit organizations for the provision of free and high-quality after-school and summer programming through the library's Nashville After Zone Alliance out-of-school time coordinating system. RS 2024-573, Porterfield, Styles, Walsh, and others approves a memorandum of understanding between the National Public Library and the Metropolitan Department of Parks and Recreation for the provision of free and high-quality after-school and summer programming through the library's Nashville After Zone Alliance out-of-school time coordinated system. RS 2024-574, CAP, Porterfield, Styles, and others approves a notice of land use restrictions and property assessment and warranty applicable to a portion of Shelby Park in connection with a stream bank restoration project. RS 2024-575, Porterfield, Parker, Welsh, and Bradford appropriates $50,000 through a grant contract between the Metropolitan Department of Water and Sewage Services and the Tennessee Environmental Council to provide trash and debris removal around Nashville's waterways. RS 2024-576, Porterfield, Parker, Welsh, and Bradford appropriates $59,565 through a grant contract between the Metropolitan Department of Water and Sewage Services and the Cumberland River Compact to provide trash and debris removal around Nashville waterways. And number 19, BL 2024-429, Porterfield, Evans, Walsh, and Gadd approves a contract between the Metropolitan Government and Concentra Health Services Incorporated for the provision of medical services to employees who have sustained occupational injuries. Is there anything else that anyone wants to bump from the consent agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? The consent agenda passes, 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The first item that's not on the consent agenda is RS 2024-561. Porterfield, Evans, Walsh, and others approves the application for a Second Chance Act Pay for Success Program grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, acting by and through the Bureau of Justice Assistance to the Davidson County Sheriff's Office to support the Sheriff's Behavioral Care Center in providing effective substance use disorder treatment and improved recovery outcomes for incarcerated adults preparing for reentry. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries, 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. The next item not on consent is RS 2024-566. Porterfield, Evans, Soror authorizes the Metropolitan government to join the state of Tennessee and other local governments in amending the Tennessee State Subdivision Opioid Abatement Agreement and approving the related settlement agreement. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded, and we do have someone here to speak on that settlement. Could you, is it okay if you speak on it? All right. You are recognized. If you could just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Allison Bussell, the Associate Director over the Litigation Division of the Legal Department. Also here in the gallery is Kenny Bird from Leaf Cabraser. They are actually our outside counsel pursuing these claims in the multi-district litigation against the opioid manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. This is the third resolution that we've brought before the council, but I believe the first one before this council, amending the settlement agreement effectively that we have with the state that dictates how these opioid settlement funds are to be distributed between the states and the state of Tennessee and the subdivisions within the state of Tennessee. So this particular amendment rolls Kroger as a defendant into that settlement agreement. So all of the 25 million plus that we are already receiving, and of course that's over many, many years, but that this money would be on top of that money that has already, that's already coming in. I will just also let you know, because there have been some rumblings about it. Just last week, the Supreme Court struck down the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy plan just to alleviate any of your concerns. While that does have an impact on the broader litigation that we are part of, it does not have any impact on what you all have approved and are approving tonight. There have been no funds from Purdue paid out because their settlement was tied up in bankruptcy court. And Kenny, you jump up if I'm saying anything incorrect. But that has no impact on what you're approving tonight, though our outside counsel will be renegotiating what the Purdue settlement looks like in terms of what we will hopefully be receiving in the future, but that has no impact on what you're approving tonight or on what you have already approved in the two prior resolutions.
Thank you, Director Bussell. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries, 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. RS 2024-568, Porterfield, Evans, Allen, and Soror appropriates $1,971,656.19 from the Metropolitan Government Office of Homeless Services to the Salvation Army for the provision of housing services and life navigation skills to people experiencing homelessness in Nashville. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries, 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. RS 2024-570, Coupin, Porterfield, Parker, and Welsh accepts a donation from the 601 Lafayette Owner, LLC, in the amount of $100,000 as a contribution towards infrastructure improvements towards the cost of construction of a nearby pocket park. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember Coupin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move for a 2-meeting deferral with a brief discussion.
Is there anyone on the committee that would like to move for a 2-meeting deferral on behalf of a non-committee member? Okay, Councilmember Evans has moved for a 2-meeting deferral. Is there a second? Councilmember Spain has now seconded. Councilmember Coupin, you're recognized.
Thank you for helping me with that, even though I'm not on the committee. Appreciate that. This bill is accepting a donation from a developer as part of an infrastructure improvement. There's some clarification needed in the language of the document itself, and so we've determined that it would take 2 meetings to get that done. So also kind of a housekeeping cleanup matter on this bill, and would love for the committee to support a 2-meeting deferral.
Thank you. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns on the 2-meeting deferral? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? This legislation is deferred for 2 meetings. 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Bills on second reading, BL 2024 -343, Styles, Cooper, Eslick, and others, amends Chapter 2.112 of the Metropolitan Code of Law regarding the membership of the Metropolitan Nashville Arts Commission and the process for approving the criteria for awarding funds. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? Was there a second? Okay. It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Allen, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had 2 amendments I would like to move, please, ma'am.
Okay. Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
So the first amendment changes how the staggering of the terms goes, which just needs to be cleaned up. And then also changes the way the council representative is chosen, which would be to be selected by the Arts Committee, but voted on by the whole council body, which is one of the options we talked about at the last meeting. So I would move that amendment.
Is there something about a non-voting?
And that they would be a non-voting member. Thank you for that. The council member would be elected by the council body, but would serve as a non-voting member.
Okay, thank you. And is that Amendment 1?
That's Amendment 1.
Okay. Councilmember Styles, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to speak in support of Councilmember Allen's Amendment 1 and say that this would be very beneficial. So if we could ultimately have someone on the commission from this body, I think we'd have a better idea of what's happening at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just also, I want to point out, as some of us are aware, we have some people who have served only 1 year on this because that was how their terms were initially set, which anybody who's served on a board or commission knows you just can't get much done in a year. And if we're turning over every year, then that is really not an efficient way to run a board. So I appreciate my colleagues bringing this so that we can have more appropriate terms so that this commission can really get going.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Amendment 1 say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Amendment 1 passes. 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Amendment 2, Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Amendment 2, I haven't printed it out. Oh, I know what it did. It changed the process for approving the criteria that the board used from an ordinance, which would take 6 weeks, in essence, to a resolution, and didn't require it to go in front of the commission, just to speed that process along, because otherwise the whole grant process is expanded enough as it is, and that seemed cumbersome.
Thank
Move
you.
that amendment.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Are you moving your amendment?
I did move that amendment.
Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Councilmember Styles, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not in support of this amendment. The reason why I'm proposing that it is an ordinance instead of a resolution is that it was proposed to be a resolution several years ago, and then it never came before the body again. I feel like it being an ordinance requires it to come before us and to go through a real process, and that gives us an opportunity to have feedback in to the process. This isn't about deciding about how the money is spent. It's just to say what the process is, not how they're allocating it. Because a lot of the confusion in Metro Arts this year had to do with us not knowing anything of what was going on over there.
Thank you, Councilmember Styles. Councilmember Evan Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question. Does it currently have to be a resolution in the code today? I was a little confused by my colleagues' comment.
Director Darby, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, I have to look that up real quick. It is supposed to, if there are changes to the criteria, that criteria is supposed to come to the council for approval, absent it saying ordinance or resolution. It should come by ordinance, but I would need to look up the language specifically. Oh, it says resolution, I'm told, so without looking it up. Thank you.
So then I guess my follow-up question is sort of knowing that we've been doing it wrong, sort of going forward, what would the process be? Do we need to approve the current scheme by resolution? Will it be flagged going forward as a resolution? I guess I'm not sure why we would change it to an ordinance. And I'm just trying to understand how we correct the past wrong and that information gets incorporated going forward.
Thank you, Director Darby.
This is the type of legislation that would be administrative driven. So the commission or the staff would be the entity responsible for preparing such a resolution or ordinance, if it were ordinance, to come before the council. The council would not be the entity responsible for bringing it before its own body.
Councilmember Evans Siegel.
Thanks, Chair. I think if we're moving forward with the plan to have a representative on there to sort of catch any errors that might occur, I think it's sort of on this body to know what is happening on this commission and to make sure resolutions coming before us, if the commission approves it and the resolution doesn't come before here, what remedy does council have to make them bring it here?
Director Darby.
We could send a letter requesting that they comply with the code.
The last question, I think, would an ordinance be different?
An ordinance would not be different. An ordinance would take more time to get through the council for approval.
While I really appreciate the oversight work that has gone in to this by my colleague, it does seem like this is a change that doesn't solve the problem we have. So I'm not going to support it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there any additional discussion? Councilmember Spain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just following up on that. I'm confused now too. Can the administration tell us their understanding of what is required now versus what would be required under this amendment?
Okay, that was directed to the administration. Mr. Rosenberg, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Council Member. Thank you, Chair. Under the current ordinance, the council has to approve the criteria by resolution, but not annually. Under this legislation, either the amended version or the version as filed, the council would have to approve annually. As filed, it would go through a 4-meeting process at the Metro Council, including an appearance before a committee, and then 3 subsequent meetings for the readings. Under the amended version, it would come to the council annually, would be required to, but only for a 1-meeting process.
Thank you. Councilmember Spain. Thank you. Councilmember Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I guess in reading the amendment, I'm not in support. And I think the primary reason why I'm not in support is because I feel like there's a lot of need to rebuild trust, not only in kind of the processes of the commission, but just how we understand information kind of being shared from this particular commission to the council body. I think there is a lot of momentum around the idea of the arts community being able to get access to more funding. But at the same time, we need to understand the story and it build over time. And I think that, just leaving it to resolution and not having kind of that more in-depth conversation, especially considering we just approved or recommended approval of the prior amendment that would bring somebody elected by the full council body onto the commission as a non-voting member. We don't currently have like a connection point between when we're electing people from the full body to some of these additional like boards and commissions necessarily. It's not a very formal process. And so I'd like to move this or definitely not vote in support of this particular amendment, primarily because I think we need to look at how we're doing some of these activities a little bit differently. And I hope this spurs maybe more action around strengthening the relationship between our boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Council Lady Styles, I see you. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak before I go back to Council Lady Styles? Okay, I'll do Styles and then I'll go back to the sponsor. Council Lady Styles, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I appreciate all the discussion, and I truly appreciate Councilmember Allen for putting forth these amendments, and I understand the desire to move smoothly through the process. Unfortunately, to Councilmember Evans' point, I think what we've seen over the last year and really prior years, we just didn't know that we didn't know, is that we need to have input in this process. And allowing it to go through the 3 readings means that we get to hear from them during the committee, for them to come for second reading. And if we have any questions, we can fix it. And before it gets to third, it can be done. The resolution, I think, is a little bit, I don't know, it seems too fast. And it becomes, oh, it's just a resolution. We'll just say yes, and we don't really know what the process is. This ordinance allows us to know what the process is and be clear when we're voting for this to go through every year.
Thank you, Councilmember Styles. I see Council Lady Evans Siegel, and then we'll go back to the sponsor. Council Lady Evans Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, I got this backwards. I'm not in favor of it being an ordinance as it's currently written. I am in favor of this amendment, keeping it as a resolution, which is the current process we have. Because I think if we'd had that current process in place and actually done it, then we might be in a different place. And so changing it without even having done it seems unnecessary and frankly could delay payments to artists and really back things up.
Thank you, Council Lady Evans Siegel. Council Lady Evans, Council Lady Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, because I'm not sure I can hold that thought much longer. Good discussion, and I do think it's important to rebuild trust, and I appreciate those comments. I will say, if something is a resolution dealing with the arts, I would expect that the council office would also refer that to the Arts and Parks Committee so that it would have that vetting. And I do hope that all my council members, colleagues, do their homework and read the analysis and read the criteria before they vote on these things. And if they have questions, we can defer them. So I would just say, I think it is important that we're thoughtful about it. I think the mechanism exists. And as our Councilmember Evan Siegel has brought out, just in streamlining the process and ensuring that we don't hold up payments to artists is also an important consideration. I feel like this strikes the balance, but I look forward to further discussion and see how the vote comes out.
Thank you, Council Lady Allen. Councilmember Evans, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I think, kind of thinking through the calendaring process, I guess, of grant awards, I think, thinking about this particular legislation and the amendment process, I think it would then be imperative for the interim director to kind of include that in her timeline and the commission's timeline as they're thinking through payment. There should not be any issue with executing timely payment if the process is started early enough. And so that's one thing that I would kind of consider why I'm not going to support this particular amendment, is because anything can be solved if you're planning far enough ahead. And I think this would force that conversation earlier. And so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Council Lady Styles, final comment. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in agreement with Councilmember Evans. I think because the grant process right now has been delayed because we're still getting things squared away from 24. I still don't think everyone has been paid. It's now July 1st. And if they know that this process is changing, they can plan ahead and know that they're going to have a new deadline. If that means that they're on pause for this year, if they delay payments till later this year, they just get to plan ahead. And I think this helps us help them. In speaking to commissioners, speaking to the chair, they really do want to hear more from us and have some more guidance. And I think this would allow that to happen.
Thank you, Council Lady Styles. Any other questions or discussion? I have a question for the administration. I know there's been some conversation about making changes to our kind of boards and commissions and just an overall rehaul of our boards and commissions. Can you give us an update on where we are in that process?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sure, there are two things going on right now. There are two concurrent phases happening with the working group. The first is a survey that's going out to all board and commission members. It's a lengthy survey regarding structure, operations, relationships with departments and stakeholders, and a whole litany of things that is in progress. The other thing is that the Rules Committee will be considering the first piece of legislation to come out of the working group, which will address charter compliance, solving some term staggering issues, and addressing excessive absences. That meeting is next week, I believe, that Rules meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'll hold my comment till we vote on the legislation as amended. Anything else? Council Lady Styles, is it on the amendment? Is it on the amendment or is it in response to? Council Lady Styles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first time that I'm hearing about that, but I'm glad to hear that there's legislation coming, but it doesn't address having council members on boards and commissions, and we do have needs for council members now to be on boards and commissions. So I'm happy that legislation is moving forward, but I would love it if colleagues would be mindful that that is not upcoming, so that it doesn't hinder us from being able to do things right now to make decisions about placing people on commissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady Styles. Anything else on the amendment number 2? Seeing none, all those in favor, since I know we'll have a no vote, at least one, can you please raise your hand if you are in favor of Amendment 1? Excuse me, Amendment 2. 1, 2, 3. Chair votes yes. That's 4 in favor. If you are in opposition of Amendment 2, can you please raise your hand? 1, 2, 3. Are you abstaining? Okay, 1 abstention. So 4 in favor, 3 against, 1 abstention. Motion carries. Amendment 3 is Councilwoman Toombs, who is not here. Is there anyone on the committee who is willing to move Council Lady Toombs' amendment? Okay, it's been moved for the purposes of discussion. Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Director Darby, can you give us, tell us what what Amendment 3 does?
Amendment 3 changes, it's related to the member of council who would be designated to serve on the committee. And it removes the language that says that this member would serve on the Arts, Parks, Libraries, and Entertainment Committee. And rather, the council member would be elected from the membership by a majority vote of the council as a whole.
Thank you, Director Darby.
Just one other thing, this amendment also does not change the, or kind of clean up the staggering language that was cleaned up in Amendment 1, would be cleaned up by Amendment 1.
Does this conflict with Amendment 1 if this
Yes.
passes, if 3 passes?
Well, not in committee. On the floor, members would need to choose between 1 and 3.
Okay. Is there any questions? I know Council Lady Styles, but did any committee members have questions? Council Lady Evans Siegel, you're recognized.
It also doesn't fix the voting, non-voting issue, I think. Am I correct? You're correct.
Okay, Director Darby said that you are correct, just for the purposes of it getting on the microphone. Council Lady Styles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not in favor of this amendment. I'm in support of Amendment 1.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns? Director Darby, if just for clarity, so in Amendment 1, the Arts Committee puts forth a nomination from their committee and the full body votes on it. In Amendment 3, the nomination comes from the full body and not from the Arts Committee. Is that correct? And if there was some type of combination at this point, it would need to be a late file. Like if there wanted to be an amendment to Council Ladies Amendment 1, that would need to come as a late filed amendment. Okay, thank you. All right, any additional questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor of Amendment 1 say aye. Amendment 3, Amendment 1 has me in a chokehold, y'all. Amendment 3, everyone in favor of Amendment 3 say aye. Chair votes aye. Anyone against Amendment 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Against, 0 not voting. Amendment 3 fails. Now we are on the bill as amended with amendments 1 and 2. Can I get a motion as amended? The bill as amended. It's been moved and properly seconded. Okay, discussion on the bill as amended. Council Lady Evans Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I think just sort of mindful of the timing of the working group on boards and commissions, I would move that we defer this one meeting and with a brief explanation.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded. Council Lady Evans Siegel, you recognize.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a really, really important issue. Again, I really appreciate the work that a lot of my colleagues and the sponsor has put into making sure we get this right. I just worry that if we move forward at this point while we are still waiting on some of those recommendations, that we're going to end up kind of giving whiplash to this poor commission that has just been through the ringer with everything. And I just want to make sure that when we do it, we get it right and they can finally have the stability they need to do this work well.
Thank you so very much, Council Lady Evans Siegel. Council Lady Styles, you're recognized.
Thank you so very much. And I appreciate the comments from Councilmember Evan Siegel. Again, having spoken to the individuals that are serving, there is a desire to have someone here. So while I applaud us working on boards and commissions and getting things clear, we can do this work. We can appoint someone now so that they do have a reference point. And when the legislation comes fully forth, it doesn't change anything. Earlier this year, we appointed someone from Public Health and Safety to be on the Metro Action Commission board. So we have already done appointments from committee this year. This is not a big move. If we're going to make changes for the future, that's great. So we make them for the future. But right now we have an opportunity, and I think that's what we need to do. Otherwise, we are further crippling a group that does need assistance.
Thank you, Council Lady Styles. Is there any additional discussion on the one meeting deferral? I'll hold my comment to the end. Council Lady Evans, you're recognized.
So I guess normally I would say, yeah, let's defer it one meeting and see kind of what happens with this legislation. But I mean, we're on second. And so if we're going to be hearing some filed legislation, we're having this meeting next week, and if we're going to be hearing, this other legislation that'll be coming our way, I'd kind of prefer to have a chance to read like what's coming our way. And so I don't want to impede progress with a deferral for something that I think would be really valuable to move forward and to have, because I don't necessarily feel like this is an entity or an issue that needs to be like, let's make it holistic and have everything kind of run alongside each other. I do think that this is kind of an important time. When I've heard from employees at the at Metro Arts, and that kind of colors my perspective on this a little bit, that I would prefer to move us along as opposed to getting hung up in like a deferral conversation. So I'm not going to support a deferral tonight.
Thank you, Council Lady Evans. Is there any additional discussion? Director Darby, is this amendable on third?
No, this is not amendable on third.
Thank you. My concern would be that it's not amendable on third. So I would be in support of a deferral and possibly even a re-referral back to committee so that we could make any additional amendments that that this committee sees fit in the event that, based on what we hear from, or based on what comes out of the wheel of the legislation that's brought about boards and commissions, if we determine that additional amendments are needed, I think that will give us an opportunity to address that. So I would be supportive of a deferral. If the sponsor is willing to re-refer it back to committee, I think that would be beneficial. Council Lady Evans Siegel.
Then I would amend my motion to, or we don't need to re-refer?
We don't need to re-refer because it'll already come back to committee. So I'm in support of a deferral. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of a one meeting deferral, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those opposed a one meeting deferral. 1. No abstentions, no one not voting. So a one meeting deferral passes. 7 in favor, 1 against, 0 not voting. The next item we're going to roll that to the hill. We have one more piece of legislation, and then we'll do our last item. So the next item will be Bill 2024-428. Coopin, Porterfield, and Allen approves ratifying and adopting Chapter 68 of the Private Acts of 2024, authorizing the establishment of an East Bank Development Authority. Can I get a motion? It has been moved and properly seconded. I did receive a letter requesting from the sponsor that is deferred for one meeting. Can I get a motion for a one meeting deferral? It has been moved. Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on the one meeting deferral? Oh, I didn't see you over there, Councilmember Coopin. I thought you were gone. Councilmember Coopin, you're recognized.
I'm still here enjoying the wonderful going-ons of the Budget and Finance Committee. Appreciate the recognition, though I'm not on this committee. Just wanted to share with the body and with the public that Councilman Parker is going to convene, or Chair Parker rather, is going to convene the East Bank Committee on July 15th at 3 o'clock to review this legislation, answer any questions, and kind of address this bill. So the goal from the one meeting deferral is to follow a similar path as the Fallon deal, to just give us time to digest it, have conversations, have the committee meet, and then hopefully vote to approve it. So I appreciate the support on a one meeting deferral.
Thank you, council members. Is there any additional discussion on the one meeting deferral? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Now, the last piece of legislation we have is BL 2024-427. Parker, Porterfield, Gamble, and others adopts a transit improvement program for the Metropolitan government, approving a surcharge for the program and requesting the Davidson County Election Commission to call a countywide referendum election to be held on November 5th, 2024, regarding the levying of the surcharge on certain taxes to fund the program. Can I get a motion? Is there a second? It has been moved and properly seconded. Colleagues, we do have a very brief presentation on the transit plan before we vote on it. I am going to get this presentation going, and then we will take any questions. If you all recall, you did get an email about any questions that we may have. We will definitely entertain any questions today, but just keep in mind that some questions are a little more complex and may take a little bit more time to answer. So if there are any questions that are asked that cannot be answered today, we will get that information back to you in an email to the committee. Seeing that, we will now go ahead and get the presentation started. So if you could please introduce yourself, you are recognized.
Thank you. Thank you. One more time. There we go. Thank you, Chair Porterfield. Appreciate this. And also thank you all for, I awkwardly got up before I got excited hearing on second reading. So appreciate you all being patient with me and a little bit of grace. So I'm Michael Briggs, Director of Transportation Planning in Mayor O'Connell's office. So I'm going to do a quick overview of Choose How You Move, our transportation improvement program. And first, I want to thank, though, our department heads and staff that have helped contribute to this work. This includes WEGO, NDOT, Planning, Finance, and Legal. Many of them are in the back or over at the table and will help address questions as you all have them. So, Choose How You Move will complete the priority sidewalk network. These sidewalks are focused on access to transit along our busiest streets. It upgrades nearly 600 signalized intersections. We expand transit service to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our busiest corridors and connect more neighborhoods across the county. And our busiest streets tend to be some of our most dangerous for pedestrians. So these improvements will improve safety for all traveling through these corridors. If approved by Metro Council, voters will have an opportunity to decide to implement Choose How You Move on November 5th. So the reason we need investment now is that many of our pikes look like this on Dickerson Road, where people are walking in ditches and crossing highly trafficked streets to access the bus. This is not a new issue, and Nashvillians have indicated for some time that we must improve public transportation. And we're getting behind. Nashville is one of 4 cities in the U.S. of the top 50 cities that does not have dedicated transportation funding. So Choose How You Move will allow us to leverage back $1.4 billion in federal funds. And these funds are going to places today like Kansas City, Oklahoma City, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. And they need to be coming back to Middle Tennessee. Nashvillians have told us they want this program, and we've pulled from over 70 plans over the last decade and 66,000 pieces of input. Those have helped shape how our most practical solutions included in Choose How You Move. Residents have identified this for years, and if implemented, it provides reliable travel options to get around the city. This ultimately will help reduce the cost of living for some in Nashville and keep many of us thriving. So I'll start with the first S, which is sidewalks, where we'll add or upgrade 86 miles of sidewalks, completing our most important needs along many of our main corridors connected to transit. This will also open up walkable access to transit for 1 in 3 Nashvillians and add sidewalks in many of our underrepresented neighborhoods. The second S is signals. So this is our best chance to modernize our traffic signal system like never before, because we will update nearly 600 signalized intersections. And in some cases, we'll be going to the county line for future opportunities to connect to our neighboring counties. These signals will be connected into a traffic management center that NDOT will open this fall, and analytics will help monitor congestion patterns and alert engineers to issues much sooner. Our third S is service, and I have a lot that I could cover here, but I'll only hit a few highlights. We'll upgrade our busiest routes to 24/7 service and double our frequent service. This includes upgrading 54 miles of streets to all access corridors where everything is improved. That's improved in new sidewalks, coordinated signals, reliable transit service every 15 minutes or better, and improved safety. 12 transit centers like the Rip Patton Transit Center in North Nashville will enable travel from neighborhood to neighborhood without having to go downtown, and 17 park and rides with 4 express routes from areas like Jolton, Rivergate, Antioch, and Bellevue will set up opportunities to connect regionally when our neighboring counties are ready. Also, we'll have a program for free rides with an enabled quick ticket account based on existing eligibility programs like for housing or nutrition assistance. Our final S is safety. And so we'll overlay these improvements to address our most problematic corridors. Nearly 285 bus stops are upgraded, 35 intersections are redesigned, and miles of bikeways are added. So think of complete street elements like on Madison Station Boulevard or 31st Avenue. So why does this matter? The reason this is important is because the cost of living in Nashville has increased. Housing and transportation often make up the 2 biggest expenses for most households, and many Nashville households spend over 40% of their take-home pay just on those 2 items alone. As we continue to grow, we will have more traffic, so we need reliable options to get around the city. So Choose How You Move will be paid through a half-cent sales tax surcharge, and what this means to your wallet or pocketbook is that when you spend $50 at Walmart, you will pay an additional 25 cents. For most households in Davidson County, that's about $6 additional each month. 2 things are interesting, though, about the surcharge. One is that our surrounding counties, except Sumner, already have a sales tax rate at this level. So if you go to Cool Springs in Franklin, the Avenue in Murfreesboro, or Providence Place in Mount Juliet, you're already paying that half-cent. The second thing is that we estimate about 60% of our sales tax being paid by visitors. So these are people commuting into Nashville from surrounding counties, or they're in Nashville on vacation. And I'll finally point out that our sales tax in Davidson County has not changed since 1989. So when will we see the improvements? Think service and technology improvements sooner and capital projects later. Some of our corridors have expanded service in the first couple of years, and so it's a matter of getting buses delivered and drivers hired. Then service expansions will increase over time. Programs such as the low-income fare program can also start in those first couple of years. Some signal improvements along corridors will begin, and we'll begin discussing the design of the all-access corridors. We'll get shovels in the ground on some of the infrastructure projects after year 2, with hopefully an all-access corridor coming online towards year 5. and all projects being completed within 15 years. So information about the program is at nashville.gov/transit, and you can scan the QR code. The full program document and summary are on the website. And we also have an interactive map where you can zoom in and out to your neighborhood or your area of town and see what improvements are programmed. We'll also be adding more resources onto the website in coming weeks. And you can request a transit talk by going to hub.nashville.gov, and someone from our team will be able to present at an upcoming meeting. So thank you all for your time today, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs. I see Councilmember Huffman, Councilmember Evans Siegel, and then Councilmember Cortez. So Councilmember Huffman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Michael. That was a very helpful presentation. Quick question regarding the prioritization of the modernized traffic lights. From year 1 to year 5, how is that list getting broken down? Is it by specific area of town, frequency of cars going through? What's that look like?
Yeah, so there will be a number of things to factor into it. And so we'll have to think through things like the laying of fiber on certain corridors and connecting to that. We also have to take into account the all-access corridors and where those improvements will happen. We've also got Brad Freeze, who is our chief engineer from NDOT, that can also answer questions and add to this.
Mr. Freeze, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Brad Freeze. I'm with the Nashville DOT. So prioritization is really going to factor in with the transit, the all-access corridors, how Michael mentioned, but also considering what we already have as far as our network, where we have gaps in our existing communication network with regard to fiber optic communications that we're adding as part of this, and how we actually can communicate back to the traffic management center. So those are really going to be a focus. But the number one focus will be how that integrates into the all-access corridors.
And just a follow-up question is, just so it's on the record, fiber is a prerequisite?
That is our preferred method of communication, and we did include fiber optic communication as part of this plan. And that there are instances around the peripherals that will depend on wireless connections, but we are definitely focused on the fiber backbone, and has been part of this discussion, specifically when we talk about the all-access corridors, laying that fiber into the ground for those communications.
Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. Before you go, I just have a quick follow-up question. Which communities have fiber? How do we know which communities got it, and how were those communities chosen to get it?
Well, we have fiber along a lot of our corridors, but it's kind of in a patchwork, right? We don't have it consistently. So like in Murfreesboro Road, for example, TDOT had their I-24 Smart Corridor project that they led and then went to deployment. Along that corridor, we actually were able to they actually laid a lot of fiber for us overhead in there. So but Metro IT has been in their process of going through their fiber deployment plan. So I don't have that information with me as far as the specific locations of the fiber, but we can provide that available as far as what the network currently looks like.
Thank you. Councilmember Huffman, did you have any additional questions? Councilor Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you. I listened to Transportation Committee on the way in, and Councilmember Spain had asked a question I wanted a little bit more information on. He had asked about the prioritization, like amongst 40 council members with 40 different opinions. And you, I think, made a comment that if a developer allocated a streetlight as part of a development initiative, that you all could make a decision to move that light or kind of, I guess, take over that allocation from us, I suppose. And so I guess, can you share more detail?
Sure. So after the vote in November, if it's approved, there is some flexibility that we have to have with the program because we anticipate implementing this over 15 years. So development could come in and trigger some of the improvements that are planned on one of the corridors. So we would we wouldn't want to rip those improvements out or completely replace them. So where that has happened, we would shift parts of the program to other areas of town.
Oh, I see. So you wouldn't be like, oh, you got a rezoning with a condition that requires a street light at this location. You're not going to say, no, it's not going to be at this intersection. Instead, we're going to move it over to, this other intersection.
Correct, but some of that will be on a case-by-case basis, just depending on how it's approved, what the multimodal traffic analysis says, or if there's conditions of like the SP approval. So it's hard to predict right now what that exactly looks like from case to case, but our intent would be that there's flexibility in this so that we can then move some of the improvements that are part of the program onto another part of town.
Okay, and so this is not like a retroactive, this wouldn't be, I've got a project that we're going to be talking about tomorrow night. It's got a street light in it. We're going to throw down if somebody tries to take that light. So you're not going to try and come and snatch my light, are you?
Correct.
Okay, just making sure.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. Councilmember, I can't remember who was next. Evan Siegel is next, and then Councilmember Cortez.
I mean, I don't know. There are people in this county who might enjoy watching somebody try to take a light from somebody's hands, especially if one of these chocolate bowls is involved and we're all sitting there. I asked a question in transportation and infrastructure, and it gets tricky because part of this is money and part of it's infrastructure. So I want to make sure my budget colleagues hear it. NDOT and transportation and infrastructure said that about 60% of the sidewalk cost is actually stormwater. So when we think about 4 S's, they're really 5. There's stormwater, and what we calculated in that committee is that about $223.2 million dollars of this plan is probably stormwater with sidewalks. And then I believe you had mentioned to me that there are also other stormwater improvements as well. So we did the numbers there. We're doing infrastructure here, and now it's all backwards. But if you'll just add a little bit of light to that extra stormwater, that'd be helpful.
Sure, and our colleagues in the back with NDOT may want to jump up, or stormwater as well. So as part of the improvements, we do have to factor in stormwater and other utilities. So either relocating some utilities or improving that, particularly along the all-access corridors. So when you had asked about the sidewalk number, that was just looking at sidewalks that are part of the program. But you have to also factor in that we have all-access corridor improvements, some complete street elements. And we have accounted for some stormwater improvements with all of that. So when you think of like an all-access corridor like Dickerson Pike, we had a rain event just a few weeks ago that it was really pouring down, and it was not handling stormwater well at all. In fact, the 4 and 5 lanes was often down to 2 lanes because people were having to dodge water that was moving on it. So this really is the opportunity to upgrade major infrastructure. So not only for transportation purposes, but then also for some of these other needs related to utilities.
Council Lady Evan Siegel.
Every time I ask, then another one pops in. So sorry.
I saw the light bulb go off over your head.
Can you talk a little bit about those utility improvements? I know we hear a lot from people. My colleague, Councilmember Benedict, who is not here right now, in particular on Facebook, has been charged as being the reason that people don't have power in some pretty intense ways recently. And I'm sure everybody would love to hear about what utility upgrades are in store.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs.
Yeah, so when we're doing major improvements, like on one of the all-access corridors, you have to factor in the stormwater. So today, there are ditches that are handling the stormwater, or no ditches at all, and it's simply running off across surfaces that are impervious, and finding the best possible route in order to get into the stream or creek system. So that's just one utility. Chief Engineer Freeze mentioned the fiber. That's something that we have to take into account. There's just simply the utility poles that are along the street and sometimes very close to the road, where we would work to try and incorporate that into a planting strip so it's not obstructing future sidewalks or underground. And then there's other things like other cable, other communications that have to be accounted for. And I didn't mention natural gas, and I'm sure I left something off.
Council Lady Evan Siegel, did you have a follow-up? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cortez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And this question is for Director Briggs or for NDOT. In a previous discussion with NDOT, I was told that if this plan passes, NDOT will have access to more funds for capital improvements, significantly more funds that are outside this plan. Can anyone confirm that? And if so, how would those funds be acquired? Will they just be reallocated from other funds to where this would be for regular maintenance and repair for what this plan is going to pick up?
Yeah, so I can jump in and answer that. With the 86 miles of sidewalk, for example, that's completing our most pressing sidewalk needs. Currently, we don't have the money that's coming in from the federal government to help contribute with grant money on things like this that are more comprehensive transit improvements. So as part of that, we have the opportunity to stretch out than what NDOT and our other metro departments do as part of the capital spending plan. So it allows for improvements to be done in neighborhoods over time because we're addressing kind of the critical needs, essentially trying to triage the main corridors, and then we'll be able to get into some neighborhoods in the future.
Thank you. Do we know the increase that NDOT would receive if this was passed for those additional capital improvements?
I don't know that we know that off the top of our head, and I'm kind of looking to the back to see if maybe the finance.
Mr. Freeze, you're recognized.
Are you asking how much additional capital we would receive as part of this referendum?
Well, if there are going to be extra funds for capital improvements outside of this plan, if it came in, if we were able to reallocate those funds, do we have a general idea of how much those would be annually?
So that's part of the planning process that we go through every year with the administration as far as how much we receive as part of our capital programs. We put a request in, we're averaging around 20 to 25 million as far as our annual capital program for sidewalks. So I would anticipate that's probably, to keep on track, we would still be requesting approximately that same amount, but that's always a year-to-year discussion when we talk to the administration about that, when we measure out how much we've actually delivered as part of our 3-year walk and bike plan. So we're actually coming to the end of our 3-year walk and bike plan. However, this project, you may have heard Michael mention earlier, this allows us to complete our priority sidewalk network. So that's what he's saying is with this, based, if you look at our walk and bike plan, the funding for this referendum would actually allow us to use the funding that we have that we are anticipating to receive as part of our capital program. And I mentioned that that's a year-by-year discussion, obviously, but we anticipate that will allow us to complete all of our priority sidewalk network that we have in our 3-year walk and bike plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cortez. Councilmember Harrell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. If this is approved, how soon will be available to receive those federal funds?
So we could essentially start applying for the grants immediately. So the tax will be levied February 1, but we begin work to apply for grants because with it being approved by voters, that locks in a dedicated funding source.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Councilmember Spain, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That created another question for me. You mentioned that we're coming to the end of the 3-year walk and bike plan. As we're at least contemplating passing this referendum, what plan are we going to be working on? Should we be focusing on completing the plan that we're about to come to the end of versus, I assume there'll be a new plan that comes into place after that one?
Mr. Freeze, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can answer that. So when I say the 3-year plan, there's a 3-year deployment plan as part of that. We still have more miles to deliver as part of the walk and bike plan. Walk and bike plan is very comprehensive. However, we are going to go through the process of updating our work plan for sidewalks. We'll draw off the walk and bike plan. So the walk and bike plan is rather extensive as far as identifying the sidewalk need across Metro Davidson County. And then from that, we have developed a 3-year work plan. So we are going to be in the process of updating our 3-year work plan in the next year. But that will draw from the the previous walk and bike plan from 2022 as well. It's already identified the needs, but we also are anticipating some additional planning efforts in the future as part of that. That makes sense?
Councilmember Spain.
Thank you. It does, and I think you know where I'm going with this. But so just because we may have a sidewalk in our district that's not in the priority network,
That's correct.
there's reason to think that there may be an avenue to get that done in the near future, given these additional resources.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Spain. Any additional questions? Mr. Freeze, before you go, I have two questions, and I don't know if this is to Mr. Briggs or Mr. Freeze, or maybe a combination of both. I believe I remember hearing somewhere at a presentation that Murfreesboro Road was one of the first streets that was going to get the improvements. Do we know and I know that there's fiber, there's a implementation plan, all of these things. Do we have an idea of the other streets that are going to be kind of prioritized as some of the first ones that will be addressed? Mr. Briggs?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. So we know Murfreesboro Road would be first in terms of looking at the planning along the corridor for the preliminary design. So it had planning study funds put on it by the prior administration for us to look at Murfreesboro Road. The second all-access corridor is Gallatin Pike. The reason that is NDOT has already taken some community engagement on portions of Gallatin Pike. The section of Gallatin Road from Briley Parkway to the East Bank is also a local street, so we have a bit more control over that. So those are the first two that are up.
Where does Nolensville Road fall on this plan?
We don't know that at this point. So what you'll see in the document is a conceptual schedule, and so the key word there is conceptual. Because the program has factored in our revenues, any projections, bonding capacities, and construction. It hasn't factored in things like additional community input, engagement, other things like ridership, and some challenges involving right-of-way at this time. So we can only say with some certainty we have an idea of two corridors that will move forward first. A lot of the other major projects are still up for discussion.
Thank you. Do you know where it falls on the conceptual plan?
Yes, the planning work discussion begins about midway through the program, with it being completed within 15 years.
Okay, so that's like 7 years out. I guess my thought is that, and this is probably a longer conversation outside of budget, but just making sure that we're, implementing this plan in a way that is equitable, and, would be interested in receiving that implementation, the fiber implementation plan, so that we can see where fiber has been laid already and where it hasn't been. Because the concern would be if certain communities got fiber, but if other communities didn't get fiber, and now they're getting pushed down the list because they didn't get the initial investment, and now they're going to subsequently be pushed further down the list. And Nolensville Pike is a area with a pretty vulnerable ridership, and I think that we have to make sure that we're looking at implementing this in a way that is both fiscally responsible but also equitable. So, Mr. Freeze, would you like to speak to that? I see you came back to the podium.
No, I was saying, working with Metro ITS is the one who is really supporting the deployment of our fiber optic communication for Metro services. So we can give you more information on that, and the committee and all council members more information on how that is laid out.
Thank you. Can we get that prior to the vote on tomorrow?
Let me see. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And then, Mr. Briggs, I just had one more follow-up question. The free rides, you said, will be within the first few years. Do we have an idea, the first couple of years? Couple can be subjective. Like, do you literally mean couple like within the first 2 years? Or do you mean like the first 7 years? Or what are we looking at for free ridership?
That would be within the first 2 years of the program.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any additional questions? Seeing none, the motion is to approve it at this point in time. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay. Any abstentions or anyone not voting? Motion carries 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.